Okay, we're going to be talking about another way to factor. So last night we did factor by grouping. This is just factoring in general. And we're going to be doing it without a leading coefficient, which means we're going to have some trinomial, x squared plus some bx plus c, or maybe an x squared minus bx plus c, so that I don't have a coefficient in front of x squared, but I do have some constants or coefficients b and constant c. We're going to do lots of examples of this so you really know what you are doing. And this is what your test will be over when the test date is listed on the board. Okay? So, let's say I have x squared plus 8x plus 15. If you'll notice, this is a trinomial. There's 3 terms, which means it would be really hard to do factor by grouping because I can't split it down the middle per se. So I'm going to be looking for, I'm going to make myself a little chart. And my chart is going to be factors of whatever my C number is, so of 15 in this case. Because in FOIL, my last, the L in FOIL stands for last, and that's what makes this number. And I multiply them together to get that 15. But my O and my I, my outer and my inner, I combine like terms, I add them together, and I get this middle number. So I'm looking for something also that gives me a sum of 8. Okay, so I'm looking at factors of 15 that give me a sum of 8. So then I'm going to list pairs of factors. I know there are factors 1 and 15. When I add those together, I get a sum of 16. So I know that's not it. And I start looking again. And I think, oh, 3 and 5 are factors of 15. If I added those together, I would get 8. Okay? So then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to essentially just say x plus 3, x plus 5. I'm going to put my factors in parentheses with my thing and go. That is the shortest way to get by with it. What really happened was I said, this is x squared plus 3x plus 5x plus 15. And then I did factor by grouping, and I split it down the middle. I said I can take an x out of this, which means me x plus 3. And I can take a 5 out over here, a plus 5, which means leaves me x plus 3, which gives me x plus 3, my repeated pair, times my pair that's out, or my things that are outside, those x, and then plus 5. And oh look, I got the same thing. If you know your factors, and you know they're, like these were both positive, so that gives me the x plus 3 and the x plus 5, I can jump straight in here. Okay, I don't have to list out all this extra work. This is great work if you need to check your answer, if you need to back up your answer and prove it, but you can come straight to this. I don't mind that. And I know this seems like a lot right now, you will get better at these. You will be able to do them fast without thinking. I mean, thinking a little, but not spending a ton of time on them. Okay, so we're going to practice for several days this week and all next week as well. But let's go ahead and do another example together. So I have x squared plus 14x plus 40. And I go over here and I make my chart. And I need a product, or I'm sorry, I think I used the word factors last time. So I want factors of 40 that give me a sum of 14. So, I can start with 40 and 1 if I really want to. I can I can skip it if I know that's not going to work, but I could try like 8 and 5. That gives me 13, which gets me really close, actually. I know 2 and 20 aren't going to work. It'll give me 22, which is way too big. But then I can try like 4 and 10. Oh, those work. That gives me 14, okay? It's not bad to try these things first, but if you know they're not going to work, you can skip over them too, okay? So I have 4 and 10. Those are both positive. Again, I have just plus signs in here right now. When I hit negatives in here, I'm going to have to look harder. But right now, all my B's are positive, all my C's are positive. So I can just come here and write x plus 4 times x plus 10. And again, a great way to check these are FOIL. I should be able to take this, my answer, and FOIL it and get what I got up here. And if I do that, I should get x squared plus 4x plus 10x plus 40, which would simplify and give me what I started with. Okay, so that's just a good way to check your work. But this up here is actually my answer. Okay? So let's go ahead and try another one, and I'm going to switch colors so it's easier to see. Where I have x squared minus a b, so minus 10x, plus 24. So now I'm still looking for factors of a positive number, 24, but my sum is going to be negative. And you may ask, how can I get factors to give me a positive answer when I multiply them, but add to negatives? Well, remember that a negative times a negative gives me a positive. So I can use things like negative 8 and negative 3. They multiply together to give me a positive 4. But when I add them together, I get a negative 11. Again, that's not quite what I'm looking for, so I try something else. Negative 6, negative 4. When I add those together, I get a negative 10, so those will work. So I come over here and I have x minus 6, x minus 4. Okay. Try this next one on your own. Okay. So if you took those kind of same steps, maybe you jumped straight to here and then you jumped in here, as long as you get the correct answer, that's what we're looking for. And I'm going to do one more example with you, just because it might be a special case kind of thing. Let's say I have x squared minus 10x plus 14. So I am looking for factors of 14 that give me a sum of negative 10. So I'm going to start listing some factors. Negative 2, negative 7 come to mind. When I add those together, I get negative 9. What other factors of 14 are there that will give me a negative answer? Well, I could try negative 1 and negative 14. That gives me a negative 15. Any positive factors would not give me a negative sum. Okay? There are no factors of 14 that give me a sum of negative 10. So what I can say is that this one is prime. It literally cannot be factored. And it would be really nice. I mean, obviously, that's not a lot of work then. if it's prime and it can't be factored. D. But not many of them are going to actually be prime when we come to look at it. Most of the time you're going to want to try to factor it. And it's one of those things where it's like, oh, there's 3 primes on this quiz or whatever. Then you might start looking like, oh, maybe did I, am I sure this one's prime? But you really need to double check. Okay? The last thing we're going to talk about is how to solve. Again, this is going to use the zero property a lot that we talked about yesterday, where if one of the factors is 0, the whole answer is 0. So I might as well try both of them to be 0. So I have x squared minus 13x equals 22. That's not equal to 0. So if you remember, I need to subtract that 22 over. And I don't just move it all willy-nilly, I subtract it. So I have x squared minus 13x minus 22 equals 0. Now I need to factor. So I want factors of 22. I'm sorry, this should have been a negative, which means I added it over. Otherwise, it won't really make sense. Factors of 22 that have a sum of negative 13. Again, watch your signs because I've done this a million times and I could make a really careless mistake if I wasn't watching my signs and copying the problem down correctly. Take it as a learning example, as I just did. So factors of negative 22, I'm thinking negative 11, negative 2. If I add those together, oh look, I get negative 13. Amazing. So I factor it, x minus 11, x minus 2, and that's equal to 0. Again, just one of those has to be equal to 0, but I'm going to try both of them. So I'm going to say a negative 11 equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0. I solve both of them. So this one I get x equals 11. This one I get x equals 2. And remember, I have to consider both of those answers. So I would say 2 equals 2 and 11. Thanks for watching.